Hey there, this is Chanel Dupree with Navigating Child Welfare, and I want to talk about shame in foster care. I want for folks who are in this work, the work of families, the work of social services, the work of mending what at times is broken, to understand that beneath all of this, at times, can be a lot of shame. And shame is very powerful, and shame can stop people from getting what they need, when they need it, and how they need it. I remember I was in court and a grandmother walked up to me. We had just had a temporary order of custody hearing, which means that it was an emergency hearing, and the court had decided to remove children from their parents. And I represented one of the parents, was just appointed to represent one of the parents. The grandma walked up to me and said, just in tears, distraught, if I would have known that my child was struggling, I would have done something. And I'll tell you, there were several times that this happened. And what I came to understand is that someone can be drowning, someone can be like about to not make it, and no one knows. And that's really a shame. That's really something that we have to fight against. But the problem at times can be that when someone asks for help, it feels like we're not actually helping, we're hurting. And so when we think about the people that are positioned best to help, I talk, of course, a lot about helpers, and you have your individual helpers, you have your community helpers, and then you have your institutional helpers. And typically, our institutional helpers are what's called mandated reporters. And so these are folks who are mandated by law to report allegations and suspicions, really, of child abuse and neglect. And every state says who is considered to be a mandated reporter or not. But what is clear is that there is this pressure and responsibility, because I do want to be clear that there are absolutely times where reporting has saved a child's life, where reporting is the right way to go, where a family needs to be deeply involved with the system. But I also want to be clear, and let's be honest, that two things can be true at the same time. That there have been times when a family just needs help, just needs support, just needs resources, and they're thrust into our system, and they're thrust deeply into our system. And that is not actually helpful. If I just need a filling, man, a root canal it's going to be pretty terrible. Like I don't need a tooth excavation, whatever the case, whatever analogy you want to use. But just think about how at times our solutions can be very extreme, and then they're no longer solutions. And so when we think about why a family stays in a place where they're not willing to share, and it's something because most of the times, if we would just address the issue early, right? If we would get in there early, then we wouldn't have a situation to where we're having to do so much. Personally, I think about my grandmother, who we ultimately lost to breast cancer. But this is the thing. We found out I was about to get married. It was the summer I was going to be married. And I got a call from my mother. She found out that my grandmother had been struggling and like had breathing problems, all the things. She went down there, made her go to the doctor, and ultimately it was a situation where she had advanced breast cancer to the point where, it was visible. There was something wrong, but my grandmother was just so afraid and shame of needing help, needing to go to the doctor, the fear of the doctor, like all these different things. And so she just for years didn't say anything. And what we found out, of course, is that if she would have brought it sooner, if she would have gotten it addressed sooner, it didn't have to get so bad. It didn't have to be so painful. It didn't have to be so painful for her. And so at times we can struggle, but with that knowledge, because we want for people that we love and that we want the best for to not have to struggle unnecessarily. But it's like the fear of the unknown is greater than getting the help that you need, getting the incremental help and support that's necessary in order to make someone whole. And so when we think about the work that we do with families have the same fear. It's like the worst possible situation. But this is the thing. Sometimes their worst possible, like, it's true. They're not imagining it. And so how can we make sure that when we're offering families help, that it truly is helpful? So what I want to share and what I'm committed to just continuing to talk about is the need for our families to be protected, for this work to be connected, and for us to have simple joy. But protection means protection from harm, protection from self, protection from things that we know are harmful, not overdoing, but working to make sure that the help that we're prescribing is actually help. The support that we're providing is actually support. If we are not careful, we can begin to have a very arrogant view of ourselves and what we do, and we can think that we are the answer. And that's just simply not true. That there are many different interventions that a family can have, many different supports that a family can get tapped into. And our work as helpers is to make those connections. And so the next part, of course, so protected. So sometimes it's protection from the family. There's some harmful things that are happening within that family, and the child needs to be protected. The children need to be protected from that. At times it's being protected from our system. We know that if this family dives deep into the system and they don't need to, that it's going to cause irreparable harm. And so how can we make sure that we're protecting our families? And so then we go into connecting. And I believe that protection is also connection, that no one entity or organization can do this by themselves, that there has to be connection, that the people who do the work of families have to understand who is at their disposal, who are the different resources that we need to make sure that we're tapped into so that we are connected and we are collaborating. And again, we don't develop a mindset that we are the full answer. That's never true. It's always many things, not just one thing. And so protected, and then making sure that we're connected. The other piece is simple joy. And when I say simple, I mean our processes, how we engage with families, how we do this work, how you understand this work. It has to be simple. It can't be so complex that only a few elite understand what's actually happening and how to be successful. I remember I was doing a train the trainer with a child welfare organization, and I was asking the question of, what does success look like for you? What does that look like in your work? People had very different definitions of what success looked like. It is so important to not just get so busy doing this work that we don't understand what success looks like, that we don't understand how to make this process simple for families, that we don't get so caught up in our organization's jargon or just the work that we're doing, that we don't realize that everyone who we encounter, they're new to this. Like, this is new, this is scary, this is different. They haven't been here before. I say this about every day, actually, when I'm in service and I'm talking. I'm like, y'all, we all need help. And you've never done this day before. Like, this is not Groundhog Day, right? The movie where the same day repeated over and over again. So you kind of begin to understand how to navigate it. You've never done this before. You've never worked with this family before. This family has never worked with you before. This family may have never been in the system before. And so our patience and our tolerance and our compassion and our understanding for what it means to not know, what it means to be scared, it has to be elevated. We have to remember it. And all we have to do is just think back to when we started something new that was scary and that we were excited about. It was still new. There was still a learning curve. Think about when you're starting something new and you don't want to be here. You're starting something new and you don't think you should be here. You're starting something new and you feel like you're not sure who actually helps. And so it's so vital that we remember, and that we simplify our language, we simplify our processes, and Then lastly, joy. So simple joy, right? When we think about joy, when we think about what it means to have joy, and I'm really talking to the people who are doing this work, because a family's success rate goes up tremendously if you stay. If you stay in this, if you are consistent, if we don't have the constant disruptions in our system that we have in our system, our families do better. Joy comes from understanding your impact. Joy comes from being rested. Joy comes from understanding the value that you're adding and you believing that you're actually helping. Joy comes from all of that. And so what I do and how I just continue to help and support families and people who work in the family and child welfare system is our families getting the right type of help, the right level of help within our organizations, and then making sure that our organizations are connected. I have a framework called Connecting the Systems, and I have 10 systems that I share and I go through with organizations, because I remember I was in a training one time, and it was probably an hour and a half long training, and for 10 seconds they said, and child welfare needs to connect well with other systems. That was it. So that wasn't 10 seconds, that was like 5 seconds. Well, we're missing some things there. How, who, when, where, what, like all the things. And so that's what this training does. And I really love this exercise, this framework, because it's tactical. It gets you thinking. It expands your thoughts on how I connect well with systems and who I need to be connecting with, and the time frame that needs to happen with. And right, simple. We need to make things simple for families. We need to make things simple for our workforce. And so I have a webinar series, a Syncing Child Welfare webinar series, where I have different videos where I'm simply explaining the process or connecting with others who can explain Medicaid and child welfare, who can explain special education and child welfare, who can explain navigating the child welfare system, who can explain the questions that doctors and medical professionals need to ask. And so simple, right? How do we make things simple for families? And we know we have a lot of visual learners, and so organizations can license this series, or I work with them to develop their own. And then joy, have a joy assessment that really starts and ignites the conversation. It sparks it. It starts with, what does burnout look like for me as an individual, and what does joy realized actually mean, and how can we develop longevity in this process? And so what I know for sure is that shame can stop so many different things, and it is involved in child welfare. And so we have to recognize it. We have to fight against it. We have to make sure that our families are protected and connected, and they have simple joy, that our workers have this experience as well, so that we can make sure that our families have what they need to thrive. You can begin asking different questions to staff, to volunteers, and to families on, is your process clear? Is it helpful? Do people understand it? Because oftentimes we can get so immersed in a thing, we think it's clear, but you've looked at it 50 times. If someone's new and they're coming into your organization, into your ecosystem, how easy is it for them to understand? And so sign up for the newsletter today, subscribe, you will be sent that child welfare confusion audit. I'm looking forward to staying connected.